Hello and welcome to the Ventura County Astronomical Society's January 15th, 2021 general meeting. My name is Reza and I'm the Vice President of Orange County Astronomers, reporting live to you from the International Space Station. OCA is happy to join forces with VCAS to make this event happen. Before we start the main talk, I would like to point out to you the ways in which you can interact with us. First is the raise hand function. Please go ahead and find the raise hand button and click on it. This is how we're going to applaud our speaker shortly. Let's check and see. Excellent. We have people raising their hands, and this is how we're going to use it to applaud our main speaker. Second, look for the chat menu item. This is how you can send us any comments you may have, and all the panelists will receive that, and you could interact with us if there's any points you would like to make. And third and last, please find the Q&A option on your screen and look for the Ask a Question button. This is where you can ask speaker questions during and after the presentation. Although I will be asking the questions after the presentation, you could send it out during the presentation too. And with this, I'm handing it over to Keith for his part of the meeting. Keith.
Hello, I'm Keith Salvis, president this year and last year for the Ventura County Astronomical Society. Ventura County Astronomical Society members and Orange County Astronomers members, welcome. Glad to have you all with us tonight for our first meeting of 2021. Let's hope it's better than 2020, yes? What I'd like to do first of all, and this is for VCAS members, is that take about a minute and a half, since it's January, give a state of the club speech, get you all up to speed as to where we are, and then proceed on to introducing our speaker tonight, Hal Jandorf. So this is where we are financially. At the close of December, we have $9,900 in the bank, nearly $10,000, which is really good because this time last year, we had right about the same amount of money. Here's what's changed. We don't have any expenses. We do have our Alcor dues, which are about $450. And then we have our insurance, but we're no longer paying rent for the Moore Park College Forum or the Moore Park College Observatory. So our expenses are almost nil. What we did, because we can no longer loan out scopes either because they're stored at Moore Park College, we decided we're not charging dues until this pandemic is over. So we've got no money coming in, but we've got no money going out either. We started out last year with 145 members. Now we have actually 150 members. People joined even though we didn't have anything going on. The other thing is we extended this as an offer for free membership to people that want to join and check us out. Since we're not able to really give the services that we promised, we might as well open the doors for other people to sample our membership. I hope they're with us tonight. And as of today, we have 30 trial members. So there is a lot of interest in astronomy over here on our end. So that's where we are. Where we're going in the future, Reza and I are talking about having a more formal tie between Ventura County Astronomical Society and OCA. That could be as much, right now, we can't actually do anything, but as soon as we're able to rent the observatory at Moore Park College, and you saw the pictures as we started up, you're all invited. Absolutely. And if you've got anything going on, you want our help, we'll be there for you. I'll put out the word. That's where we are right now, informally. But Reza and I are going to talk to where we can actually become possibly something like sister clubs of all of the organizations that are in Southern California. There seems to be a natural bond between our two clubs. being that Hal has been a speaker for you before and you're looking to have him as a speaker again, and we are willing to share him with you. We're not selfish at all. Astronomy is for everybody. And I will get to introducing Hal in just a moment. I'd like you to know that I'm joined by our Vice President of Observations, Matt Gusky. Thank you, Matt. Todd Mitchell, our calendar committee, who put together our calendar yet last year, celebrating the women of astronomy. Our membership coordinator, Beth Riggs, is here tonight. And our vice president of programs, the one who is organizing our speakers, David Contreras. David has been extremely busy because he works in a place that's on the front line fighting this pandemic that we have now. So I'm very fortunate and blessed to have him able to join us tonight. He's working like 12-hour days. That's our panel that's with you tonight. For all of you in Orange County astronomers whom I can't see, we love you all and we all share the same love for astronomy. And that brings us to our speaker tonight, Hal Jandorf, who is going to give us his life story and how he came to love astronomy from a child today. A brief introduction: Hal is a mechanical engineer, and for 21 years, he was a civil engineer for Point Mugu. He has spent 37 years as a part-time teacher of astronomy, teaching at both Moorpark College and Valley College. And also, as far as the Moorpark College Observatory is concerned, Hal's work and his persistence is basically solely responsible for the fact that we do have that astronomy at Moorpark College, even though it's named after Charles Temple, the one who donated the most money, and we can't knock that because it does take money to have this happen. Hal is the one who actually made that observatory come true. I've spoken enough. It is time to turn the floor over to Hal, who is going to tell us how he came to love astronomy. Former president, current teacher of astronomy. I turn it over to you, Hal. Hal, unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes, okay. Okay. This is kind of a voyage, I guess, in a lifetime, and it's still going, still continuing. And I'm sure that some of you entered the amateur astronomy field. You have the same and very similar stories that you've got. That's why, according to the end of it, you might want to think about on the chat what your thoughts are about this too, because it's just one of many, many times or many different lives as an amateur astronomer. And I'll show you what happened to me after the many years. I think I keep saying, well, I must be around into astronomy for about 60 or 70 years, more like around 60. Yeah. So it started for me, as you can see this slide. This is actually the Sputnik, and that was launched and started orbiting in 1957. And this was started me at that time. I think it was about 9 years old at that time, and climbed up the steps into the apartment roof with my dad, and we saw this across the sky, and it was pretty amazing. This was New York, though, in this case, and there's a lot of stuff in the city itself in astronomy, and not only astronomy, but museums, tremendous amount of science entities there in the city itself. Really, it's kind of fate for me that started this. I know my brother passed away about a year before I was born, so I never saw my brother. He was into sports, and he was 10 years old at a camp, and that's at summer. And he did a match, a boxing match, and was knocked out. And unfortunately, the injury was pretty sustained, really pretty bad. And so he passed away in camp. So obviously, when I was born, my parents thought, no sports for Hal, it's going to go in science a lot more, less dangerous. And so I guess that was the path right there. So let's move on to the slides and see what happened when I was a little kid. What really did it is actually the Hayden Planetarium. Unfortunately, it's not here anymore. There's a new one, but this one for me was extremely mysterious. Going inside there when you're 5 years old, most kids are really afraid and frightened by the dark. But for me, it was just amazing. What my memories is this room right here does not exist anymore. But here on the ceiling, you can see this. See if I can get a little bigger on this one. Maybe, no, okay. In this one, they're planets, are little tracks, and they glow in the dark. And on the walls are like the constellations. And when it's dark, it was very, very amazing, especially for a little kid. And the planetarium itself is a Zeiss. No, that is not me there. It's just a photograph, not me and my mom or stuff. But we did go there for many times. And this was the start of astronomy for me, at least for amateur astronomy. We moved to Los Angeles in 1960. And my toys were more science toys, like this one. It's a planetarium, a home planetarium. And I was using that and learned the constellations and started teaching my friends and my relatives where the constellations are. I still have that in my closet, and we still use it sometimes too. That was a long time ago. Of course, in Los Angeles, we've got the Griffith Observatory, and there it's kind of like a redo on what we did in New York itself. I think when I was high school, in junior high school, I interviewed Clevin. I don't know the name of it. It was the director at that time, and we're talking about the career path. And I remember that too, as talking to him at that time. It was a long time ago. Obviously, the telescope was another amazing thing for me. The telescope was huge. And this is about 12-inch diameter refractor with about a 9-inch diameter telescope on top of it. And you line up just like we do now and take a look at Saturn or the moon. And that was amazing. I needed that. I had to have one. I had to have one. So I started looking at about 12 years old, looking at some of the ads, like this one, Unitron at that time, an amazing instrument that you could get, and pretty expensive, but it must be cool. It has to be cool. I mean, obviously you have to smoke too, as you can see, must be. Then we got these ones right here, about $550 for this. I wanted to have one of those. Of course, with the cost right now, it'd be more like about $5,000. That's way off of my budget as a 12-year-old. So what I wound up was this telescope right here, which a lot of people wind up with this in the beginning, that is. It is a 60 millimeter, 2¼ inch diameter refracting telescope. I remember it was about $40. And it's a terrible, terrible telescope as a beginner. But I had to use it, and I was thrilled by the views of Jupiter and Saturn. I was at the top of the roof of an apartment in Los Angeles with this just every clear night, which is amazing. In 1961, I was looking as a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. And I thought, I wonder what's going to happen next time. Well, I remember it about 30 years after that. And this just happened a few months ago. And I was photographing it again, this time the conjunction and one of the closest conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn. But of course, it was not this telescope, though. But I was amazed, just here coming the same thing. What was amazing for me, though, was the size of Saturn and how tiny it looked. And it was real. It was not a photograph. When you look through it, it is the real rings. And actually, I use that when I teach as kind of a gauge of the excitement that the students have. If they look at Saturn the first time and they notice it's really small, they get really excited. Say, this is amazing. It's like fake. I think somebody put a sticker on it. It's just incredible. It's real stuff. And they get A's. But if they look at Saturn and they say, oh, well, it's small. Obviously, they don't have a soul. They have not even a soul. So I can gauge that on the interest in astronomy with a view of it through a telescope of Saturn. So I had to get a bigger telescope. When I was high school, we had this one. It's a 4-inch diameter reflecting telescope. And I love that telescope here. You can see it right here. Tremendous amount of images of deep sky objects, more aperture, and so you could see more. But still, I guess I started an era of high school, which means I was more interested in dating than it was for telescopes. So it took a few years to kick up again. A lot of years, I guess, because when I finally got married, I bought one of these. And this is a Celestron 5-inch Schmidt Cassegrain telescope. Now, I guess we could say this is a real telescope. It has the potential of astrophotography, observing. It has a motor drive. This thing is extremely old for the standard right now, but I still have it, and it is still an amazing instrument. But bigger telescopes and a bigger family too. We had twins. This is one of my twins right there. Well, that's Brian. He's about 3 months old. Honestly, you cannot prop up a chair and have a 3-month-old person look through a telescope. No, we've tried it. We tried it. You get to around like maybe 6 years old, and then they start to really grasp the view through a telescope. So that worked. A matter of fact, I have 3 kids right now, and they're pretty old right now, but they still have interest in that too. Many years ago, we used the Celestron 8 telescope in the snow right here at Mount Pinus, and that was my favorite spot for doing astrophotography. And that is about 9,000 feet elevation, and it takes only about 2 hours to get there, to get out of the light pollution. But I needed bigger ones. Probably about 20 years ago, we got this 20-inch diameter Dobsonian. It was huge. For me, that was huge. And you could climb up that ladder and look in the eyepiece, and it was amazing. I remember the first time I did that. We were at Mount Pinus setting it up, and the first view was a globular cluster called M13. Climbed it up in the dark and looked at that, and I was staring at it with my mouth open for about 5 full minutes to see the incredible view with such a big telescope. And I forgot I was on the top of the ladder, and I backed off and fell right on my back on the ground. So you notice that astronomy can be dangerous, as you can see. Let's try the next one. It's getting pretty heavy and it's a hassle. So I wanted to get a little more into astrophotography. So about 10 years ago, we got this. It's a 5-inch diameter refractor, pretty heavy mount, that motor drive. And that's where I really started taking photography through the telescope. And you'll see some of those in a few moments. Of course, when you get older, you have to kind of downsize, especially with telescopes. I can't hang these or drag these things around anymore. It's too heavy. So now the biggest telescope I have is a 4-inch diameter telescope right here. And now we're using that. You'll notice the background. This is Borrego Springs. I'll mention this in a few moments too. We use that as a nice area to observe. I think, Keith, you've been there, and it is amazing. And it's nice and warm at night, which is pretty nice. So then we get into astrophotography. Yes, this is my first camera that I used. When I was high school, I hooked it up with that telescope, that small little telescope, and took photos of the moon. And it actually worked out. We worked a little darkroom techniques with that too. And the images were fine at that time, but we had to get something better. You get older, more expensive SLRs like this, and this one is a Minolta. Most of my film, and by now, you know what film is, by the way. We use digital now, right? But most of my images were on film with this camera right here. But we had to change. For digital, my recent one is the Sony A7, and it is digital. And boy, it's like learning astrophotography again. Totally different techniques on that, but the potential is so much better. Now, my students, they're thrilled the fact of taking photographs with their cell phones. All you need to do is put it on the eyepiece when you're looking at the moon, and the images are great. And they literally are thrilled. They pass them out with Facebook to their friends and relatives, and they think they're God or something. Just how did you get that? Well, it's really easy. Unfortunately, for photos of the moon is okay, but when you're talking the planets, it's a little bit more difficult, and it's extremely difficult to get deep sky objects. So really, the moon is great with the digital, or I should say with a cell phone like this. Here's some of the photos my students took. The crescent moon, and this one, a gibbous moon, just with their cell phone. And this one, I'm amazed too, with his cell phone. Look at this one. Pretty cool, isn't it? Well, yeah, I think I'm losing my sense on that one. My wife is into this too. She's looking through the telescope here, and she likes it because one of my sub hobbies is chasing eclipses. So she likes to likes the trips. And we've been all over the world to see this. And we use a very small telescope like this one to pack it up and just go to anywhere we want. But it gets pretty expensive. I hooked up with the Museum of Natural History as a guide, so I get to go free. And we spent about 10 years chasing eclipses all over the world with a small telescope. And all I need to do is show them how to observe safely and take their photos, and it was great. With the small telescope, though, you can create really great images of the moon, as you can see here, or the full moon right here. That small telescope is an 80 millimeter diameter telescope that takes all these photographs. It's so easy to pack it up too. But the eclipses are really spectacular. The same telescope, this one is the one last three years ago in 2017 in Wyoming, in Casper, Wyoming. You can see the diamond ring right here, some of the prominences, and the next one, a closer view of it right here. Wonder if we can get this larger. See if I can try this. Try this. There, maybe that does it. You can see a closer view of one of the prominences right there. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Try the next. Also, we use Photoshop. This is an eclipse I did in the Greek Isles. We were actually on the ship when we did this. So I used his Photoshop to put the Acropolis right here in the foreground, and we put the eclipse in the background. So it looks pretty cool. I don't know, it's not really cheating, it's art, right? If you so. Small telescope though, I love taking photographs of lunar eclipses. And there's going to having another total lunar eclipse next, I think it's this year. Yes, I think we will have this year. That's going to be fun to see. Now, I was an engineer at Point Mugu for 21 years, and it was time to leave. I was still teaching, though, in astronomy, but unfortunately, the timing was bad. Okay, there I decided to retire, there were no jobs at that time. The recession, remember that? The recession, right? The only thing, and matter of fact, there are few classes at the colleges too. So we decided to teach little kids, that is elementary schools. And they paid us for doing it, a whole whopping $50 for one class, including a star party. And so they loved it. It's incredibly, cheap for what we've done. And they keep calling us. I don't have time for this anymore. And they keep calling me to go and do it again. We showed them how to use the constellations, showed them the power of the sun, made them arsonists, as you can see right here. They use these filters so they can look at the sun safely. Oh, kind of like a cult, solar cult right here. I love that kind of stuff. Showed them the phases of the moon. Well, actually, I do use this in teaching in college too, but we kind of moved it into a younger set, as you can see. The length of the entire solar system in the model of what we did here. Well, that amazes them too. Now, there are many just not only teaching little kids or college kids, we also went to the mountains with groups just for fun. This here, you could see again, this is the roof of the planetarium at Valley College, where we're using the students. They had 8-inch diameter telescopes there, and they still have them, and I still teach there. But the one I want to mention here is going up to Mount Pinus. Turns out you think the boring way to do it is to drive there. But to me, I loved it because those roads are spectacular. That means I had to get a sports car. So we started to get Miatas into a group we call the Miata group. I hope you know what that is. Sports car, Japanese, kind of cheap one. And we had like hundreds of people that would follow me all the way up to the mountains, into the Mount Pinus, and set up the telescopes up there. But then we used other different sports clubs too, sports cars clubs that went up there too. This is again two photos combined together, as you can see on this one. This is the only photo I've got here. Well, maybe there's another one too that is not my photo. This is the Hubble Space Telescope. What I do is I tell the students that this will not see with a telescope. They expect to see that through their telescopes. I took a photograph of the Ring Nebula, planetary nebula, with my telescope. That's what you see with the telescope. But you're not going to see color. It's black and white, kind of like this. And no, it's not going to be bright like that. It's going to be dim like this. I don't know if you can still see it on your screen, but they know what they expect when they look through the telescopes. At the observatory, we have 50 telescopes that the students use. We only set up 10 at a time, and that is the thrill part of that class. They actually go out there and they find things themselves. They know the sky really well. They know where the constellations are. They know how to use the telescopes. And by the end of the entire semester, they are they're amateur astronomers. So that's what I've been doing for almost 37 years. As a matter of fact, I try to count how many classes I've done up there for all this entire span, and I've actually contacted about 10,000 students into astronomy over the amount of time I've been doing it. And I keep running into them. Maybe if they're doing other things, or maybe restaurants and so on. Oh yeah, I remember that class, and oh yeah, that was great. I really had fun. And then I started to getting their children taking my classes that they took years ago. And just recently, I've gotten the grandchildren of a student that took my class when I started. So you know what that means? I'm really old. That's about it, you know. So we get into astrophotography with the small telescopes to see what you can do. Andromeda Galaxy, the Seven Sisters, which you definitely can see it in the sky right now with no light pollution. Orion Nebula. Lagoon Nebula in the summer skies. The Trifed Nebula, again, this all here was with a 4 or a 5-inch telescope, either at Mount Pinus or Borrego Springs. A dying star, we call it the dumbbell, and in the center is a white dwarf. And the supernova remnant, we call it the Veil Nebula. The colors are just amazing with using Photoshop. Galaxies with up to billions of stars. So you get really thrilled by astronomy when you start seeing this. Not so much the spectacle of the image itself, but what you're really looking at. More galaxies, and more galaxies, and more galaxies. Oh, by the way, this is M81 and M82, and even another galaxy right here. This is the most galaxies I've done in one frame. You can count how many galaxies in this photograph right here. Each galaxy contains billions of suns and probably the same amount of planets. And that inspires you when you start looking through this through a telescope. Back to Borrego Springs. Borrego Springs is a tiny town that's designed for observing for astronomers because the lights are extremely low, and there's one hotel that accommodates for people who really want to see a really dark sky. This was taken with a camera, not a telescope, and you can see how beautiful the sky is. Oh, and they got a pool. Could you imagine? Jump in the pool at nighttime and the Milky Way is above. It's just amazing. Recently, the last few slides we have here, is a small telescope, which is called a cat, as you can see the cat down here. And there it's so easy to use, and it's so light, and I don't need the big telescope anymore. And here's some of the photographs that we've done with it. Orion, as you can see, the belt of Orion, the horse head, the Flame Nebula, Orion Nebula with that tiny little telescope. The recent comet, Neowise, was taken with that little telephoto lens telescope right here. So since it's kind of flat here, I thought maybe some Photoshop and put some trees in there. Twink. There, looks a little better there, huh? Is that cheating? Well, whatever you think. Okay. And of course, there you can see that conjunction we had with Jupiter and Saturn. With my 4-inch telescope here, you can see not only the planets close together, but even some of the moons. 3 moons of Jupiter, and even Rhea and Titan from Saturn itself. That's the closest it got that night. So that is an amazing thing. I really shouldn't tell everyone what it is, but might as well tell you anyway. It's called Borrego Valley Inn. And if you're thinking about it, it's not a plug or anything. It's great. The problem for me is I have a lung problem. And when I go to Mount Pinus, I can't breathe anymore. So I wanted to find a place where it's dark. And in the spring and the summer, it drops down to about 70 degrees at night. That's the cold it gets. That is amazing. And that's why we go there. I think the last photograph is this one. I just took it last night. It was kind of tough because we do have really bad light pollution here at Thousand Oaks. What I did is we're lucky we had a rather dark sky, and with Photoshop, I tried to push to get as much images out of that from my backyard. So it looked pretty good. But I'll tell you, it's a lot better with no light pollution. Recently, what's going to happen I'm doing in astrophotography is getting new cameras and new techniques, which is a new thing to me too. Every day you're learning more. Now, this is about it for my lecture. If you have any questions or any can add on maybe what your life was, this is the time to do it. And so thanks, and that's it.
Hal, that was fantastic. Thank you. Hal, I want to chime in here because you spoke of Borrego Springs. Now, in 2019, after hearing you talk about Borrego Valley Inn for, I think, several years, my wife and I finally joined you, and we went down there, and it was the most fantastic place that I have ever been. I mean, easily accessible, right there in the valley. And yes, it stayed warm all night, and it was beautiful. And one of the things that I found out, now you mentioned about looking up at the Milky Way and jumping in the pool. The only problem is that they keep the pool light on all night long, which was kind of a problem for us back then. But I did check with them, and they said, the owners said, if we rented every room at the Borrego Valley Inn, which is only 20 rooms, they'll turn out those lights for us. So it'll be solid observing. And I thought that that's a great idea. So I wanted to mention that because Borrego Springs, I can't say enough about it. And also an hour-and-a-half drive away up in the mountains is a town called Julian, where my wife and I visited. And so we went from 110 degrees in the valley floor to 40 degrees and almost raining in a town called Julian. You'd think it was the dead of winter, but it's a beautiful place. I highly recommend it for everybody. And Reza, you and I are going to be talking. I'm going to initiate this conversation with you because between VCAS and OCA, I think that we can fill every room in that hotel, and it's a very nice hotel, and make one heck of a star party out of that. So that's all I wanted to say, Hal. And of course, I want you there too. One more thing. The news for Moorpark College is that they are not going to do in-class teaching until September. And I didn't mention that in the beginning in the State of the Club address. What I'm hoping is that they'll allow us to rent the observatory before then. But we're just going to have to see where this pandemic goes before then. Maybe they'll allow the public to access the college, even though they're not allowing the students. But Hal, just a plug. Thank you again. Great talk. I love it every time I see it. Anybody else? Beth, Reza, Todd, Matt, anything you want to? Matt would like to chime in, and then we'll get to the questions.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, thanks, Hal. It's a great talk. I think it's every time I hear you do that talk, I'm always drawn to that picture of the 20-inch Dobsonian we got. And I've been dreaming about one for a long time. I built a couple Dobs, but smaller. And I was just wondering, in your experience, what's the benefit? What's that like? Is it worth it, or is that a dream I should forgo?
If you're young, which it looks like you are, yes. If you're old, no. I think what you should do is what I do now is get a good friend up at Mount Pinus, and they have even bigger telescopes, and they'll let you use yours. And to me, I like using my own, even a smaller one compared to a large one anyway. But yeah, it definitely is worth it. I would definitely look through other people's big telescopes first before you buy one.
Thank you.
And for all of you who are watching right now, Matt Gusky did do a columnation video, and it's on our YouTube page. If you want to see how to columnate a Dobsonian, go to our YouTube page. It's just under 2 minutes long. Matt, you did a great job with that video too. Really informative, very well laid out.
Okay, again, thank you very much, Hal. That was a fascinating journey. I'm glad I was here to hear it. And let me remind everybody that the Q&A is open and you could send us the questions. Before we go into questions, we have a comment from Margie Bartolomeo that they say they have had the same experience as you, Hal, going to the Hayden Planetarium in the 60s. That's great. And I believe, you know, the space race had a great deal to do with sparking interest internationally in astronomy. So let me start by my own question, and let's go to the image of your wife with that telescope. I noted two different things about that. First of all, you had the laser pointer as the finder. Is that something you did yourself, custom made, or is there something off the shelf that can be used to mount the laser pointer?
I use the laser pointer in my backyard, and of course I don't point it to airplanes, but at least so much easier. It's compared to a normal finder, and I just put it right through the rings on that, and then it's so much easier for me.
And is it easier to align it than a normal finder scope? Or
yeah,
okay.
It's just even easier, a lot easier. So I use that. Can't use it at as the students in their telescopes, because they might make a mistake, and that's the problem. I do use it for pointing out the stars when we're at the observatory for the students and the public, but as it works really nice for pointing things with the telescope.
And also you had a DSLR attached, and then there was like a edged viewfinder attached to the DSLR.
Oh yeah, the small telescope one, is that good?
Yes, the one with your wife in it.
Oh, that one. Oh yeah, there's a I think, what is it, finder scope on it, or that you're talking about, or?
Yeah, so you know how a DSLR, you have to put your eye on it, but there was some other thing attached to the camera.
Oh, it's a right angle thing. It's a right angle. Yeah, I don't think you need that anymore. That's an old camera, and it used that, and you still could. But right now, the newer cameras, they have a screen that you can swing up, so you can look down on it instead of into it, and that is so much better than that right angle thing. It's kind of like a right angle thing for the cameras, which I used for a long time.
And you also meant that they paid you $50 to teach that course. Is that $50 per session, or is that for the whole semester?
It was for the entire thing. In other words, for that class. And so usually it's 1 or 2 sessions inside, and then a trip to the observatory. And we're talking about like 30 kids. So that, how much is it per kid? You know, they really loved it, you know. So, but what really got us is the entire school would have won it. So each class would get $50 for each class, and each one is 30 kids, you know. That racked up, you know, so at least we can eat now. You know, so that did. There is one class that keeps calling us up, and it's in Santa Paula, the little red schoolhouse, really old school, and have really, really nice people there, and the students are incredible, and they keep calling me to go there every year to do a lecture there. So, but yeah, that's a lot. That's like years ago we did all those.
Thank you. And also, one of the last telescope you showed, a CAT telescope, is that really a telescope, or is that like a lens that you attach to the camera?
Really, it really is a telephoto lens, but they call it a 51 millimeter CAT. As a matter of fact, I can show you it right here.
Oh yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the little case right there. I don't know if you can see that.
It goes a little bit behind the
way,
but yeah.
This thing off here. Oh yeah. Hang on a second. Go to
Hey, Hal, while you're turning that off, early in your presentation, you showed a modern picture of Griffith Observatory. Let's see if this can, let's see. That's Griffith Observatory from 50 years ago. That's
Yeah,
from our
with stars.
scrapbook.
I know.
Yeah, I know. That's like a what, a 1965 and a half Mustang there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's old stuff.
You know what? We were young back then, but that's why I turned my camera up for a while. I had to go look this up so I could show it later on. Really interesting stuff.
This is the telescope right there. It's pretty tiny, but the lenses are so sharp. I cannot believe it. And it's one of the good ones they've actually got right now. A lot of people, very popular.
And do you have the F number on that?
F, it's F5.
Okay.
And it's like, I think 300 about 300 millimeters. Yeah.
Now, there's a question about if you know anything about the Stellina scope and the camera system. Is that something you recommend, Stellina?
Is that again?
Stellina, I think I'm pronouncing it right. So somebody's asking if you know anything about the Stellina scope and camera system, and if you recommend it. Stellina.
ST. What was it again? S.
Yes, Stellina.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's okay. A friend of mine has one of those. Yes, it's it's a like 4-inch diameter telescope, and has a computer inside. And what it does is it builds up the photons onto the sensor, and it takes a few minutes, and then you could see deeper, brighter images that's full color. And I think it is a really good idea for beginners or for schools and stuff. I think for the more expensive telescopes for astrophotography, you can get better images that way. But for beginners and getting it met for clubs like that, it would be great because you're seeing color images of nebulas and galaxies, which you can't even see normally. And I think it's great for popularizing astronomy. I think it's around $3,000 though for that telescope. And so I think it's more like a club instrument that would be good.
Thank you. And we have another question asking about Mount Pinus. Is it open for viewing all the time, or do you have to make special reservations?
No, it is open. I think there has to be a nature type, some kind of a sticker or something to use the national parks. You can go that through the national parks to get that. I think it's like $5. It's no big deal. They don't really check usually. The problem with Mount Pinus in the winter, it's just brutal, absolutely brutal. I mean, really deep snow. A lot of the skiers go up there usually, but it gets a little more easier when you go like in April, May. That's then when there's no snow.
Okay, so it is open, but you need a permit, and you don't recommend it during the snow time, huh?
Not for me. I like when it's warm. Yeah, but I used to do that. Yeah, I think the earliest I got up there was April, and it was like 30 degrees at night. So I don't like that.
Okay, thank you. Now we have another question. So what is a good way to start in astrophotography? And they acknowledge that there are a lot of online resources, but that would be rather daunting. So is there a starter class in the area, or how to get started in astrophotography?
Well, it depends. Are you talking about through a telescope or just a camera itself, or what? We need to know.
Well, the questioner has not clarified that. Maybe you can elaborate on both. Would that be good?
Well, it's easy just to get there with just a camera, a good, maybe a digital camera that you can remove the lens and a tripod, and you can get great photos with that, with a telephoto lens, without a telescope. That's where I got photos of the comet there, without much but a tripod. So it's pretty easy that way. The moon you could do too, but when you want to go to like galaxies, nebulas, star clusters, then you're going to need a telescope with a motor on it, and the expense goes astronomical, as you can see. Yeah. So it depends on what you're going to do.
But are there any like classes to get you started in area?
Well, there's a lot of videos online about beginning astronomy, astrophotography. There are a lot of them there, but I would start with just the camera. You can get things like star trails with just a camera and a tripod, a few moon photos, eclipses, tremendous amount you can do without a telescope. But when you're talking about a telescope, then it's going to be expensive.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have another question about the total eclipse over the US on April 8th, 2024. How are you preparing for that? What would be the best location to observe it? And how people can know more about it?
The biggest thing for me to prepare for it is getting our shots so we can survive. That's what I hope we're going to be alive on that. But I would aim for like Texas, because that's an area where it's more like a desert type and better weather. Aim for the ones that has the best weather. And I think that might have been the best. If you go farther north of that, and you're talking to April, the weather's pretty various. It changes. And so I have to look at what the best areas to do to see it there.
And in terms of preparation, you mentioned getting our shots. In terms of equipment or other stuff, do you have any recommendation?
Well, the one I use is a small telescope, as you saw that one. That's what I've been using all the time. But you can do that with just a simple camera. I'd recommend to just watch it first and get someone else take the photos, because you're losing the entire experience by sitting, looking through a camera view instead of actually seeing the real thing. I would say the first time, watch it and get somebody else to take the photos for you.
That's great advice. Thank you. Okay, so we do have a couple of more minutes if people want to send in more questions. Let's turn to panelists. Do you have any comments or questions to ask?
I wanted to respond to Marge Bartholomew, who wrote "Count Me In," and I think she's referring to the idea of we descending upon and overtaking Borrego Valley in sometime. And I'm really looking forward to that too, Marge. I'm hoping that I don't know if it's going to happen this year. I really do want it to happen this year, but I wanted to respond to that. Oh yeah, she's saying yes, she was exactly talking about that. So I want Hal to be the person to be there. I'll make all the arrangements. I'll coordinate between the two clubs. Reza, you and I will talk more about it. But when it's time to go, Hal, you be our tour guide. We'll take over. We'll get all the lights turned off, and we'll have ourselves, we'll show Borrego Springs just how hardy astronomers can party.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think we're going to have to wait till we all get safe up there,
Hey, Hal, it's Todd. You had mentioned in your last talk about a friend who had written an astrophotography book. I don't remember the title of the book or who the friend was. Do you happen to, does that ring any bells?
No, I don't know. I picked up one from the bookstore. It was like $30 and great photos, but it doesn't really explain how to do it. I was kind of disappointed with that one. The one I'm trying to get into stacking into that and a different type of photography, which I've not done yet. And this is all a new thing. It seems to me right now, if I go to Borrego Springs or anywhere and put the cameras you saw and you push the button and take the photo, this is really old stuff, really, really old stuff. Right now, what they do is they take a different type of camera, which is a cooled camera, because right now, Borrego Springs, it's so hot at night, the sensors gets a tremendous amount of noise. It kind of disturbs or somehow messes up your images. So the first thing, it has to be a special camera that's cooled, and they sell those now, and there's no big hassle on that. Then what your idea is there's some kind of box, an electronic box, a computer that literally takes the photos by itself. So you push the button and it, and it does for hours. So you go home, go watch TV or whatever, or set up another telescope, and so you're getting a 3-hour work on that stuff, and it takes small images, but what it does is it stacks all of them and combines them and integrates it, and does all this stuff automatically, and then you got your photo.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just got a Google Pixel that does all that, and even it stacks, and it's a phone.
It's a tremendous amount of time to do that, and I don't know. It's beyond me right there,
Right. Well, it's nice that you can have the phone do that, so you can just look while it's doing all the work.
Yes, you need a second telescope to do that.
Right.
But I've seen the photos I've done by doing that. It's more than professional. I've never seen such incredible images from that by doing that. It takes time on it.
Yeah.
So Todd, is that a special app you need to install on your Google Pixel
No,
phone?
it only works on the Google Camera app, but it only works. It has an astrophotography mode that only works on Google Pixel 3 on up. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we have a question for you, Hal. Are you still using your Sony A7 camera, or have you switched to a CCD type?
I'm going to soon, but until, like I say, when it opens up and we go places, that's what I'm waiting for. That I will get a dedicated camera for that. But I'm still using the A7 Sony for my backyard and things like this. But yeah, that's my next step.
And is that what you're attaching to the Cat-1 telescope?
Yes, you can connect to any telescope or a lens or anything like that. I think it's called ZWO. ZWO. I know you're right. I guess the dealer in that area is like Oceanside Photo and Telescope. That's the one who handles that.
Excellent, thank you. So we have gone over all the questions, and let me do a last call for questions and see if anybody from the panelists have any other extra questions or comments. If not, then I believe we are all ready to adjourn this meeting. It was great having you all with us. Let me just remind you that the next VCAS general meeting is going to be on Friday, February 20th. 8:30 p.m. As usual. And also, you can help us make these meetings better by taking a minute to fill out a survey that should be already open in your browser. With this, I wish you great times ahead and see you all next time. Have a great night.
Well, thanks. And by the way, for you and also Keith, what you're doing is you're saving amateur astronomy. I tell you, without that, it wouldn't even hear anymore, you know. So thanks for all of you.
Well, this being the 50th anniversary of Ventura County Astronomical Society, I think this is the year us old timers should try and figure out a way that we hand it off to the Gen Zers and the millennials. They don't have to deal with film. They've got the best tools and the best technology. Let's give it to them.
Yeah.
All right. Orange County astronomers, Ventura County Astronomical Society, thank you so much for being here tonight. Reza, thank you once again for your technical wizardry. You are the man behind the curtain. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, all.
See you next time. Bye.
Good night.